Hi everyone, I'm Nick, and I'm here to talk to you about some of the different theories we have in emergency management today. I'm going to talk about 4 different theories today. The first is systems theory, the second is vulnerability theory, third is sociopolitical ecology, and fourth is emergent norms. Now we've got a lot more different theories than just those 4 in emergency management, but these are the 4 I'm going to be focusing on right now. First is the systems theory. The systems theory has 3 systems that work together to create disaster situations. The first of these systems is the physical or the natural systems, such as weather patterns or geographical topography. Second is the built systems, which are roads, bridges, other infrastructure built by humans. And the third is the human systems, which describes the social interaction of humans and how humans interact with the other 2 systems. The systems theory states that disasters occur when connections between the 3 systems are disrupted. Now, the systems theory has a unique take on the definition of disaster. If a tornado, for instance, were to hit a sparsely populated area of the country, then it wouldn't have that disastrous of an impact because there aren't many people there for the tornado to impact. Disaster does take place, however, when there's a misfit between the 3 systems. A high human population and a lot of built systems for this tornado to knock down in this environment creates a big problem. Luckily, the built environment is the one environment that the human system has control over. So we can use the built systems to mitigate the threats that the physical environment poses. We can build more weather-resistant homes or establish more effective evacuation routes. The different weaknesses that the systems present and how they're handled are going to determine how each person will fare in the event of a disaster. Now, the vulnerability theory gives us a chance to review one of our terms that we learned in hazard analysis, and that is vulnerability. What is it? Vulnerability is the susceptibility of life, property, and the environment to suffering damages. That said, the vulnerability theory concentrates on people who are at the highest risk for life safety, injuries, and property loss. The problem is that these risks aren't distributed equally throughout the population. The theory itself posits that the recovery stage should be used to mitigate these vulnerabilities in more vulnerable populations by attending to the issues of income, development status, gender, race, disability, and all of these people that have these vulnerabilities should be involved in the recovery process because they're the ones that can bring the new perspectives to the table when planning the recovery effort. Next, we have sociopolitical ecology theory, which is just a ton of fun to say. And this theory states that disasters disrupt social system interactions such as work and family relationships. So, the goal after a disaster strikes is to reestablish your daily routines. But the problem that presents itself is that resources are severely limited, resources such as housing and raw materials, so people are forced to compete for those resources. So the question is, why does this competition occur? It occurs largely because of inequalities experienced before the disaster struck. Inequalities such as discrimination, poverty, and corruption. This makes it a lot harder for families, individuals, and businesses with less power and money to obtain resources such as housing or financial assistance after a disaster strikes. In order to rectify the situation, power arrangements need to be reorganized so that these inequalities don't influence the recovery outcomes. And just as in vulnerability theory, this theory encourages the participation of people from all walks of life during the recovery process to ensure even distribution of resources. Now, as we start looking at emergent norm theory, we're going to have another chance for review. We all know that the terms emergence and norm come together to form the term emergent norm, which means newly appearing behavioral guideline. It's these emergent norms that tell us how to act and interact with each other in the wake of a disaster. The theory largely rests on the fact that emergent social norms create emergent bureaucratic actions as well. This is because as civilians are trying out these new emergent norms, the bureaucracy is going to have to find new ways to react to the problems that are being created by the disaster. For example, a large disaster such as the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami called for the formation of new mass medical treatment teams as well as victim burial teams, which were, up until this point, unprecedented in the area. These emergent bureaucratic structures appear as a lack of preparation to respond to emergent norms and disasters in general. Because of the reactive nature of these structures, it becomes easy for wide gaps to be left in the response, inadvertently omitting one social group or another. The theory itself suggests that recovery needs will likely be handled by new actors and new organizations, and that unmet needs will develop. Emergence as a whole can benefit the community by creating a higher level of preparedness for the next disaster. To recap, we learned about 4 different theories within emergency management and disaster recovery today. First was the systems theory, which explained the relationship between the physical, the human, and the built systems. Then we had the vulnerability theory, which focuses on the civilians most vulnerable to disaster situations. Then we learned about the socio-political ecology theory, which explained the power struggle that occurs after a disaster. And then we had the emergent norm theory, which explains that emergent norms create emergent bureaucratic structures in response to those norms. That's all I have for you today. Thanks.